I'll just give a bit of background for people who are just tuning in. So tell me if I'm getting any of this wrong. So basically, someone on my forum suggested I should do a debate with someone from Climate the Movie. And Tom came into the conversation and said, well, look, I'll debate you because Tom's the producer of that movie. I was very critical of it. And so I always have this option for people that I criticize. I always like to give them a fair go at responding. So I said, sure. I suggested 3 topics each that we could discuss in turn. Tom's 3 topics were the urban heat island effect, which his movie talked about. And then I'll quote this, these 2 graph corrections in inverted commas that you made, and he showed a couple of graphs that were on his X profile. And the third one, your BS, which I assume means beautifully structured.
It does not. No.
Is that what that stands for? Your
No.
BS suggestion that you followed the money, in quotation marks, and correctly concluded that the CO2 Coalition funded this movie. And I put in my 3. The first one is, according to the movie, CO2 has never driven temperature. And ice ages start when CO2 is at its maximum, and ice ages end when CO2 is at its minimum. So basically the CO2 correlation, which I disputed. Second one was, in the movie, you suggest that galactic rays may cause global warming for reasons explained in the movie. In my rebuttal, I said that such a link is not credible. And finally, I also wanted to do what's called the Lundqvist reconstruction, which is the reconstruction of temperatures over the last 2,000 years, which was one of the ones that Tom also wanted to look at, which he put on the X, his X account. Have I summed that up very nicely?
Yep, that sounds good. Yeah. Yep.
And since you have, I'm happy to let you go first. I suggested we go with the graphs you had a problem with, simply because that was the one we both chose, but it's entirely up to you, Tom.
Yeah, let's do that. One thing I would like to do is to make sure there's plenty of give and take here, and I want to make sure that my audience hears everything that you have to say. So I'd hope that we don't filibuster and try to keep our answers short and snappy. I think that would be great. So,
okay, I'll give you an assurance. My answers may not be short and snappy. Science is never short and snappy. Sometimes it's complicated, but what I'll do is I won't interrupt you. I'll let you have your say if you can let me have my say. We'll try and keep the times even if we can, but I do have a bit of explanation to do.
Okay. All right. So let's start by talking about these graphs. I think that's a great thing to start talking about. It's a general hockey stick thing about the Lundqvist, I don't know how to pronounce that, and Mark Hott. This whole idea that as we look in the past, that there is supposed to be a handle and a blade. It's supposed to be pretty much not changing very much throughout the last maybe 6,000 years or so. Not much change, not many warm periods or cold periods. And then when humans started emitting CO2, then there's a sharp blade that comes up. And that is clearly caused by humans because it's correlated with us burning coal. I dispute all of that. That is not correct in any way. The evidence does not support that. That the Earth's climate varies on many different timescales, and you can't just ignore these warm periods. The IPCC back in 1990, they showed a nice big global medieval warm period. It actually said the word global in the IPCC. And I think it was. There's tons of studies that show that. So anyway, the handle of the hockey stick is not correct. And then the blade also is just grafted on there. That proxies don't show what the warmists want to show us towards the end. So they get rid of the proxies and then they just graft on this temperature record, which itself is suspect. So I dispute all parts of the hockey stick. And I think that's a big reason why people believe that humans are destroying the planet, because they believe in this hockey stick, which is not supported by evidence.
Okay. Right. Well, let's take a look. I'm obviously, not a climatologist. I'm just here to explain my criticism of your movie, and you wanted the opportunity to explain why your movie got things right. So
yes. And by the way, you did criticize me for not being a paleoclimatologist, but we're both taking into this, and neither one of us is.
Oh, I'm not either. Okay. That's another criticism. I'm not sure what your field is, but it does, look, not everyone's a paleoclimatologist. Right. I take that. Sorry if you took that personally, or whatever I said. I don't know what I said, but it was in reference to I even remember what it was. It was the CO2 correlation. You made a statement about that. you offered no evidence. And I thought, well, yeah, but if there's no evidence and you're not an expert, then I could say anything I like without any backup, and I'm not an expert either. So I'm in the same boat you are. I'm not an expert in this.
Yeah, and of course there is no correlation as you look at all the different warm and cold periods over time, short term and long term. You cannot say that CO2 drove them, because you're telling us that CO2 stayed at kind of the same level, but yet we have all this fluctuating of temperatures. So climate is way more complicated than just a simple driven by CO2 thing.
Okay. Now I'm going to just show the graph, if you don't mind. This is what you showed, and so we'll take each of them in turn.
Yep.
That's the Marcotte reconstruction of the Holocene. I'll deal with that one in a second, because this is the one that we both wanted to talk about. Now this comes from your film, and again, do tell me if I'm explaining any of this wrong, because you copied this from Lundqvist. It shows the last 2,000 years. You've got it marked, Roman warm period, cold dark age, medieval warm period, and so on. And I don't know if you can see on the right-hand side, because at the moment I've got something obscuring it. On the right-hand side there, it just goes up to the end, and then it says current, which is current temperatures. Now, here's the problem I had with it. Sorry. You reference this as Lundqvist 2000. It's not actually, it's 2010, but that's a minor mistake. That's not a big problem. It's also not global temperatures, as it says in the title. These are northern hemisphere temperatures above the Tropic of Cancer. So they're not global. But again, that would normally be something I might pick up on, but that's just another mistake. But here's the graph that you copied from the 2010 paper. Here it is, a bit bigger. Now, can you see the right-hand side there, or am I?
I can see it. It looks great. I see it.
On my screen, it's obscuring it, and I'm not sure. Oh, there, we can move it. There we go. Okay, that's the Lundqvist graph, and if we look at yours.
So the dotted part is not part of his graph. It's added on, and he does not even defend the dotted part. Marcotte himself does not defend that.
That's what we're here to talk about, Tom.
Yep.
On the right-hand side there, he's got the instrumental temperature data marked in there. Now, when you reproduce it, you take that out.
Yes, because that's not part of his graph. And let me read you what he said about that part that's been added on. Okay, response by Marcotte himself. The global paleo temperature reconstruction includes a so-called uptick in temperatures during the 20th century. However, in the paper, we make the point that this particular feature is of shorter duration than the inherent smoothing in our statistical averaging procedure, and that it is based on only a few available paleo reconstructions of the type that we used. Thus, this is the important part. The 20th century portion of our paleo temperature stack is not statistically robust, cannot be considered representative of global temperature changes, and therefore is not the basis of any of our conclusions. So he just stepped way back from that, because you can't just graph that on there. If you're looking at Marcotte, he's stepping away from the dotted part, because that's not science. It's grafted on to try to sell this idea that the Earth is warming fast. So if you look at his actual proxies, they don't show any spike of doom. And that's the case of all of these hockey sticks. None of them show a spike of doom. You can go on and on. There's tons of them that show that it was warmer in the past with no spike of doom at the end. So this is a critical part of this whole debate about whether we can trust the spike of doom, and we can't. It's not science.
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Thank you.
But I'm not talking about the same graph. This isn't Marcotte. This is Lundqvist.
It's all of them. They all have the spike of doom. You mentioned Marcotte earlier. They all have the spike of doom. It's all the same thing. They all do. Man's hockey stick, they're all the same.
But we are looking at a different graph. Whether or not you think it's all the same thing doesn't matter. Okay. You can't look at this graph and say, but Marcotte said this wasn't statistically relevant and so on. We're not talking about the Marcotte. We will come on to that. So just be patient.
Okay. Our first topic was Marcotte and Lundqvist.
Yes.
So this is our topic. I'm on topic.
First, we'll look at the Lundqvist graph.
Okay.
And what I want to point out is that when you recreated this and you claimed that this was Lundqvist's graph, you took out the period of warming at the end. Now, whether you believe that that's relevant or not, and you haven't quoted Lundqvist saying that's not relevant, this is your belief that it's not relevant. whether you believe that or not, you have said that in the movie, and you've put this as,
You can see how
you put this as current temperature. Now, the temperature that is shown here, and these are the dotted line is the instrumental temperature data. It matches the proxies quite well, but of course, if you go back 2,000 years, we don't have proxies, and that's why they have to add in the modern temperature data to show it. And if you look at that dotted graph, it matches the proxies. It goes up quite nicely. This is in peer review.
No, it doesn't match. It does not match the proxies. It does not. Nope.
I'm looking at it.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll have you say in a second. Let me just finish.
All right.
You took that out, whether or not you believe it or not, and you can make all the arguments in the world that you don't think it's justified, but you didn't say that in the movie. What you told people in the movie is, this is his reconstruction, and you put in current temperatures, when in fact the dotted line only goes up to 1990.
No, we showed the actual graph. We showed the actual reconstruction. That was the reconstruction without that dotted line of doom on the end. You can't just add that on. We showed the actual thing, and his proxies do not show the spike of doom. So I know you want to believe in the spike of doom, but it's not real. So we're showing you the actual thing, and if you're saying, oh, we didn't show this thing that's not in his reconstruction, well, we didn't, because it's not in there.
Okay, this is his reconstruction that I showed you. It was in his paper.
Without the dotted line. The reconstruction is without the dotted line. See, the dotted line goes higher than the reconstruction. That's a very important thing. His reconstruction shows a warm medieval warm period. You can't just add in this extra dotted line and say, hey, this is part of his, because it's not. I don't think he doesn't like the fact that the dotted line, that his proxies didn't show this dotted line, but they didn't. And this whole idea that we can trust trees or proxies for all of time until 1960 or something, and then suddenly we can't trust them anymore and we have to use instrumental. It's because the proxies don't show what you want them to show. And this is a very key point. They don't.
You're still not getting it.
I'm getting it.
Just listen a second. I get that you're very passionate about this. I get that you don't believe in the modern warming temperatures. I get all that. I understand that. But it's not very honest to tell people that this is his reconstruction, because you've taken out, just a minute, you've taken out the last period of the warming because you don't believe in it. So you'll just take it out and tell people this is what it looks like. And hang on a sec, tell them that this is current temperature. Now, the proxies only go up to the 1980s. So this is not current temperature. That's, you're not giving people. Now, I do agree. If you look at I've transposed one over the other. This is your graph, your movie superimposed on Lundqvist's original. Okay.
Yep. There's a dot. Yeah. There is a spike of doom on there that's not in his study. It's not there. We're showing what's in his study. So again, the spike of doom is BS. It's very important for people to understand that.
I don't believe that. You said
incredibly important. There's like a $50 trillion scam based on this spike of doom that is not real. Very important. Yep.
I'm not questioning your beliefs, Tom. I understand you believe that. You have, if you see the two, one superimposed on the other, I do agree that you followed Lundqvist absolutely, which makes me wonder, why didn't you just show the original graph? Well, because you don't believe the original graph. So
no, it's not in there. The spike of doom is not in there. We've made this point. Maybe we should move on. We disagree, but that spike of doom is not in there. It's not in any of them because proxies don't show a spike of doom. It would be great for your side if they did, but they don't. They absolutely don't.
This is what I'm showing you on the screen now.
Yeah.
Was this paper. It's there. Whether you believe it or not, that's entirely up to you, but it is there.
It's not in his reconstruction. His proxy reconstruction do not show a spike of doom, but I've said that many a time. Maybe we should move on because
several times, but I'm looking at it.
Yep.
He's showing it in the paper. It's in the paper. You claim to have reproduced his graph on your movie, but you took out the last period of warming and you only took it up to 1989. That was the date of the last proxy, and you've shown this as being current temperature. It's not current temperature. If you're only showing the proxies, this was the temperature going back about 35 years ago. Now, since then, we've had a spike. We've had an increase. Now, you're going to tell me you don't believe there's been an increase in temperature?
No. No, I think it has warmed since 1975. I think it has warmed since 1850. nothing to be worried about, but it fluctuates a lot. There's tons of warming and cooling periods. I think it's cooled since the peak of the medieval warm period, I think, and it's cooled since the Minoan warm period. It's a lot cooler than it was 130,000 years ago when there were hippos in the Thames. It goes up and down a lot. Right now, we are much cooler, or we are cooler than most of the last 10,000 years, most of the last 500 million years. We're in an ice age. It's the whole idea that the Earth is too hot right now is preposterous. It's absolutely not. As you know, cold weather kills way more people than hot weather. So this whole idea we should get all worked up by this fake spike of doom is it's not a non-starter.
Okay, now if I can just bring you back to what we were talking about. You've marked this as the current temperature. It's not the current temperature, is it? This is the temperature going back to the 1980s, the last time there was Proxy, because you've taken out all the instrumental temperature data, which you don't think ought to be in there. You've taken it out. So this is not current temperature. You do agree that since those proxies in the 1980s, we've had about 30 years of warming. You do agree with that, do you?
Oh, we had a hiatus in there. We've had some mild warming since then for sure, but we had something like a 15-year hiatus. There was all these questions. Why the hiatus? Why didn't it warm? We got 60 different explanations for why it didn't warm. So the whole idea that it's just slowly warmed because CO2 is the climate control knob, it's not. We've had some warming since the 1970s when there was a cooling scare. There for sure. It cooled. I lived in the 1970s. It was cooler in the 70s than the 40s. And it warmed up to the 40s, and then it cooled from the 40s to the 70s, and then it warmed since then. And the whole idea that we know it's just going to keep warming the rest of this century, I'm betting against that because climate changes on many timescales, and CO2 is not the climate control knob. And I don't know if you believe in that. I'd like you to weigh in on that part. Is CO2 the climate control knob?
I'll take that as a yes to answer my question. Have temperatures increased since the 1980s?
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
So what you're showing here is not current temperature. So
yeah, I mean, any graph, if any graph you make, as soon as the day later, it's not current, right? So,
okay.
Yeah, whatever.
So you didn't say that this was 1980s. People get the impression when you say current temperature, you're talking about the temperature over the last, let's say, 5 or 10 years. But clearly that's not the case. So this is not current temperature.
How much warmer do you think it is now than it was 10 years ago?
It's, I think since the 1980s, it's since 1999, when Lundqvist did his graph, it's about 0.7, 0.8 degrees centigrade warmer. So if you
wait a minute. How much warmer it is since the 90s? You think it's almost 1°C warmer?
About 0.7, 0.8.
Really? How much do you think it's warmed since 1850?
I've got no idea. I can't remember the figures.
Okay.
I can't remember the figures. But if you don't believe that,
I don't believe that.
Okay. Well, here we've got GISS, and this is the 2024 figures, which when you talk to people about current figures, you could quite easily have picked 2024 because we have the figures in.
Okay, this graph looks completely fraudulent.
2024, you could have done it in 2023.
This graph, let me weigh in on this. This graph is fraudulent. It's showing every year since since the 90s, every year was warmer than the warmest part of the 1940s. That's fraudulent. No way. It was very warm in the 1940s, so I'm not buying this whatsoever. And you can look at like the U.S. Hot temperature records. We have 50 states, and the high temperature records, something like, don't have it here, something like 35 or 38 of those were set before 1940. If you look here in Minnesota, where I'm sitting, just as another example, it hit 100 degrees here in the 30s and 40s. It hit 100F. It hit it 38 times in those 2 decades. Since 1988, it has hit it 8 times. So this whole idea that it's way warmer now, it's not. If you look at the record of heat waves, it was hot back then. My dad is old enough to remember it. It was very hot back then. And the whole idea that all the years, that whole huge set of years is warmer than the 1940s, it's not. I'm not buying it. Totally not buying it.
Just a reminder to people who may have lost the thread, what we were discussing was whether it's warmer now than 1999 and by how much.
Okay.
Now, the figures that I have here from GISS, which is does ground temperature data, 2024, you've got 1.28, 1.19, depending on whether it's the smoothing or the annual mean. Yeah. And if we look back at 1999, it was 0.47 and 0.38.
Yes, that does not agree at all with the satellite data, which I think is our best data set. 98 was a warm year, and the idea that all these, I don't know how many years, is it 20? were warmer than 1998. The satellite data does not agree with that whatsoever. It's way different.
Well, you're in luck because I've got
Yep.
the satellite data here.
Yep. Mhm.
And if you look at 1999 and compare it to 2023 or even 2024 when your movie came out,
Yep.
That shows about 0.7, 0.8 degrees of warming as well.
But look at all the years, there's that spike in the late 90s. And your graph is saying that almost all the years since then were hotter than that spike, basically, and they were not.
Okay, that's
that's a pretty big difference. Yeah.
That's the satellite data that you said you believe in now. So if we go back to the Lundqvist reconstruction and we look at that dotted line, which takes us up to 1999, in fact, you can add on to that the warming we've had since then. And so when you say that that's current temperature, it's clearly not. It's not even 1999 temperature. So that was the criticism I had. You don't seem to accept that because you think, well, as long as I believe that that dotted line is not right, I'm not going to show it to people. And what's worse, I'm not going to tell people I've taken it out. I'm going to reproduce that graph, but just take it out, not let anyone know. I'm going to pretend that's current temperature. That was the problem I had.
We showed his actual graph, as I've said many, many times. We showed the actual graph. So let's go back to that graph, if you would, and tell me about the rest of it. No, tell me about the rest of it.
Hang on, before you just go with that claim, Tom, are you telling me that in the film you showed the original Lundqvist graph? You're saying you thought you had that in your movie?
The actual result of his study, yes. Without the instrumental.
No, I'm saying, did you show the original graph in order that people could compare to see what you took out, what you airbrushed out of it?
We showed the actual result of his study, of his proxy study. We did.
You show this original.
His actual result of his study.
Not in there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, your dotted line of doom is BS. So let's go back to these fluctuations here. Do you believe in the fluctuations yourself that are shown in that graph? Go back to the medieval warm period, that one. Do you believe any of those at all? Or do you think the handle, you just think because CO2 didn't change much, then those warm periods, the cold periods, they didn't happen? Are you denying the little ice age? You're denying the cold dark ages before that? Do you deny all of those fluctuations? That's a huge portion of this. Or do you think, what do you think?
I don't know what you mean by do I believe in it? This was in a scientific paper. I'm not going to look.
Okay, so it's in a paper, so you believe it? You believe in the medieval warm period and the little ice age? Because they were an actual thing. I'm very curious if you're denying them. It's a very important point.
It's not a question of believing or disbelieving. What I do is check and verify stuff that goes on the internet. And your stuff is all over the internet, Climate the Movie.
It is. Millions of views. Yeah.
I just checked your sources to see whether what you're actually showing people is a faithful reproduction of what you're supposed to say. And in this particular case, it isn't. My beliefs are neither here or there. I really don't care.
Well, so tell me, what do you think the science says? Does the science say that the medieval warm period and the little ice age were real? What do you think? This is very important. What do you think the science says? I don't care about your belief. Do you think the science denies that those were real? Yes or no?
As far as I know, the medieval warm period was indeed a warm period. The question is whether or not it was global. Still not clear, but I did a video on this years ago. Now it's so long ago, I can't remember, but I think what I looked at when I looked at all the studies that have been done was that this was a global phenomenon, but that wasn't very clear at the time.
So what do you think caused it then? That's very important. You do believe in it, but what caused it then? It wasn't CO2, we're told, because...
I don't know why. I thought you were here to defend your movie.
I am defending. This is all part of the movie.
The first thing I do is show how you airbrushed out warming, and all of a sudden you want to change the subject.
No, this is all part of the movie. This is in the movie. These warm periods, it's a critical part of the movie, and I'm defending it because it's very, very important.
You are the guy that wanted to talk about these. You put this down as your choice of subject. So
no, you came up with this idea of limiting the debate. That was your idea to limit it because you don't want to defend all the things you said. That was your choice. I never even agreed to that. I'm defending the movie. We have a free speech in this country.
If you like, I mean, do we want to waste time on this? But I've got your email where you chose the 3 topics that you wanted to.
I'm happy to talk about those topics, but not be limited to just those topics. I'm defending the movie. I challenged you last June. I wanted to challenge you on climate, and you ignored that. And then later you said you didn't know who I was, even though you featured me in the movie. In your video, then you said, oh, I don't know who this guy is. What was with that?
I didn't know who you were. I didn't know if you.
Even though you featured me in your video that you just put out, you featured me. You looked into my background and stuff, and you said I was a.
Is this what you want to spend an hour and a half talking about, or do you want to defend your film?
I want to defend my film. Absolutely, 100%. Let's do it. Let's do this thing.
Okay. So what you're seeing now is the Marcotte graph. This is the one you wanted to talk about.
Spike of doom. Yep.
Okay. So this was the one on the Holocene by Marcotte. Now your thing about him becomes relevant. So yeah, you had that quote from Marcotte. I don't know if people want to, but look, I'm happy to accept that. I've read the paper. I know exactly what he said. I mean, I'm not a statistician. I assume you're not a statistician, but the way that I see it is that because the proxies were done over a 120-year period, so they don't take individual days when they're doing proxies over a 10,000-year period. You can only work on chunks of time, so they use 120 years. Whereas if we're looking at recent warming over the last 10, 20, or 50 years, that's obviously less, and therefore you're not really comparing chalk and cheese. That's why it's not statistically robust. But it doesn't mean that the current temperatures are a fabrication or a figment of his imagination. It's just not the way statistics is done.
No, I mean, I read that statement earlier. He just does not stand behind this. Okay, so if we're all about the science and we want solid science here, he is not standing behind it. So, yeah.
That's not what he said. He said it's not statistically robust, and he explained why. He did not say, I don't stand behind this.
Well, okay, you think he stood behind it? Let me read it again.
Hey,
let me read it again. Thus, the 20th century portion of our paleo-temperature stack is not statistically robust, cannot be considered representative of global temperature changes, and therefore is not the basis of any of our conclusions. So that is not standing behind it. You can think of any other phrase you want, but he's not standing behind it. He's saying
that was statistically robust does not mean that. But anyway,
what does it mean? What do you think you meant by that?
I just explained it to you. What it means is that you're not really comparing chalk and cheese. Okay, I give you an example because I got an example here which I hope you will appreciate. Where is it? There we go. Now, this is the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And I screenshot this, I think, yesterday or the day before. Dow Jones Industrial Average at the moment is about 40,000. Let's say you took today's average over the day, it's going to be in about the 40,000 range. Now, we want to compare that to the 2000s. If you look around the year 2000, the Dow Jones was about 10,000 for several years. And let's say we want to compare now and then. Well, the green shows the monthly averages. But if you want to compare today's temperatures, that's a daily average. That's not statistically robust. The only way that could be statistically robust is if you had daily readings of the Dow Jones throughout this graph, but that would just be too many, so they don't do it. Now, the only way that clearly this shows that modern temperatures are higher than they were in the 2000s.
Yeah, but we're not trying to predict stock prices using tree rings or anything. This has nothing to do with that. Tree rings are not a thermometer. You can't predict stock prices. Has nothing to do with it. There's this whole XKDC thing. I see this cartoon up all the time that shows it nice and flat for thousands of years and then a big uptick at the end. They're going, look at how stable it was all that time. But that's not statistically robust. They've smoothed out all the fluctuations. So because it's fluctuating now means that that's something new. It's not. It fluctuated all the time. Why would we not believe it?
If I can just get back to the analogy, what I'm trying to explain. That is not statistically robust, even though it's clear that the temperatures now, the Dow Jones now is much higher than it was in the 2000s. The reason it's not statistically robust is because that was done on a monthly basis. It is entirely possible that one of those days in the 2000s, the Dow Jones suddenly, if you look at that spike, it's suddenly a one-day spike to more than 10,000 to 40,000. And there's no way of knowing that because you don't have the monthlies. Now, this is the same with the Marcotte.
No, it has nothing to do with it. Yeah, that example has nothing to do with it. And what I'm doing is I'm going to there's a very important no tricks zone post that I sent to you beforehand. Extremely important, and people need to read it. And I know it's just a blog post, but it references a ton of peer-reviewed papers. It's incredibly important. It looks at the graphs that underlie, the data that underlies this Marco thing, okay? So, and there's 32 graphs listed in this web page, and there's 32 of those that do not look at all like this, okay?
I thought we weren't going to interrupt each other. Could I just finish the point I'm making? And then I'll be very happy to, you can go off into the fairies and talk about whatever you like. But let's just...
What fairies? What are you talking about?
Let's just focus on the point I'm making about whether or not this is statistically robust. This is your point. This is what you wanted to talk about.
Your point is that the Marco graph and stock prices have something to do with each other, and they don't.
And we're talking about statistics, and we're talking about how you are comparing something that happened over long periods of time with something that happened over a short period of time.
Yeah.
So that's the same in both cases. Now, if we look at the Markov graph, the same thing applies. That you can look at temperatures over the last 10 years or 20 years, for example, which is, the spike goes up over the last, 50 odd years to 2006. And it is entirely possible, because he was looking at 120-year periods, that during that hump in the Holocene temperatures, you might have got a spike. Like 1 month, for example, temperatures might have suddenly shot up. Or one day they might have shot up, or even 5 years they might have shot up to the level that we had now. But we wouldn't know that, because that would get buried within the 120 years. So it's perfectly true that you can't say that we are now higher than every temperature during the Holocene. That's not the case.
Okay.
But, okay. Now, that's not the problem I had with your film. Now, the problem I had with your film, and we're getting back to your film here, which you want to defend, is the claim you made. You said several thousand years ago saw the rise of the great civilizations in a brittle period, which, according to many studies, was considerably warmer than today. This is known as the Holocene climate optimum. Well, the Holocene climate optimum, the end of it coincided with the beginning of civilizations. You showed the Great Pyramids. That was about like 3,500 years ago. Now, I asked you to list those studies, and this is what I wrote when we were having the discussion on my channel. Okay, then please list these studies. I presume you or your researchers read them, all right? Surely you have a list. Let's bring them up in the debate and see if they say what you claim they say. That was 2 weeks ago. You didn't respond, so I asked again when we were emailing, and I said, could you cite 3 of the many studies that you say show the Holocene was considerably warmer than today? Then you sent me to this CO2 science site, which is the one I guess you're talking about. And it was this, and it wasn't the Holocene at all. This was the medieval warm period project.
You're saying the medieval warm period is not in the Holocene? It is. Of course it is. It's in the Holocene.
The medieval warm period.
Yeah.
Thanks for the science lesson. The medieval warm period was 1,000 years ago. The Holocene climate optimum, which is the one you're talking about,
which was even warmer.
6,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. So those are not the studies that you used to cite your claim that the great civilizations were a lot warmer.
So I sent you tens of studies. I sent you tens of them as part of this no trick zone thing. I'm looking at them here. They go on and on. Sachs 2007, Rodriguez 2009, Barrow 2009, Barron 2003, Isono 2009, Emmis 2003, Kim 2002. It goes on and on. I sent you enormous amounts of studies, peer-reviewed studies that show that it was warmer back then. So I don't know what the problem is. It's science, my friend.
All of these studies were of the medieval warm period. What I'm asking,
no, they're not. You're looking at 2 different things. You didn't look at both of the links.
What I'm asking you for.
Nope. What
I'm asking you for are the studies you say, and I'm going to quote it again. You said, according to these studies.
Yep. And I sent you those.
The rise of civilizations was considerably warmer than today. Can you just name one of those studies and send it to me now? I'll take a very quick look at it. Come on. Let's have it.
Yesterday, I sent you tens of studies. You didn't do your homework, my friend. You need to do your homework. I'm not going to stop and do it now. I'm going to put this in the show description. I sent you tens of them. You had time to look at it, and you didn't look at it. There's tens of them.
No, I've been out. I'm sorry. I've been busy. I'm trying to sell the house. I've got a ton of stuff to do, and you might be sending me all sorts of information, but I didn't see anything that said that these are the studies which we used in.
Did you send me lots of studies showing it was cooler? That was cooler all that time?
You can't even name one now, even when I ask you.
I just named like 5. Were you not listening? I just named them. Sachs, 2007. Rodriguez, 2009. Barrows, 2009. It goes on and on.
Tom, no need to go on and on. Let's just.
Well, you said I didn't name them. I named them.
Okay, name it again. I'll write it down. Let's have a look. What is it?
Sachs, 2007, Northwest Atlantic.
Sorry, Tom, how do you spell that?
SACHS.
SACH?
Yes.
X.
S like Jeff Sachs. SACH as in hotel. S as in Sam.
Right. And his first name?
It's not there. Don't know.
Not there. What's the title of the paper?
Sachs 2007, Northwest Atlantic SSTs.
Northwest Atlantic.
Yep.
And then what was that last bit?
SST, like sea surface temperature.
Sea surface temperature.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And this is supposed to show that. Okay. All right. That's the one you're using.
These are references for Markot's graph. That's what these are. There's tons of references there that underlie this graph that you want to use with the spike of doom. But these studies do not show the spike of doom. I know you want them to show it, but they don't. There's tens of them. And that's why Markot is backing away from it, because the spike of doom is not real. That's a critical part of this whole debate. This whole thing. We want to spend $50 trillion because we believe in the spike of doom, but it's not real. Very important. Right? The whole idea that we want to fight CO2 because of this is completely insane. The whole fight against CO2 is like fighting water or fighting oxygen. Okay? Yeah.
I just showed some screenshots, which I shouldn't have done because they show email addresses. So if you could blank those out or something, I'd appreciate it. I think it shows yours as well as mine. Okay. So basically now you're saying that this, a minute ago, I was asking you for, let's remind ourselves, the papers that you say showed that the period of the rise of great civilizations was considerably warmer than today. You gave me one of the papers that you say you're referencing, and now apparently, no, it's not. It's just something that was critical of Markot. Okay. So
what?
Again, what are one of the many papers that show that the time of the rise of the great civilizations was considerably warmer than today? Are you saying that paper does show that?
I sent you tens of them.
I don't know.
I sent you tens of them.
Are you saying that paper shows it?
Show me what that paper says. There's tens of them. These are the papers underlying Markot. Markot used 73 reconstructions, and none of them show a spike of doom. 0 of them show a spike of doom. They show it warm back then and no spike of doom.
Okay.
Let's go through all of them. But yeah, they don't.
I'm only interested in the papers that you claim to have, which you've been, which I asked 3 or 4 times for you to say, and now suddenly.
And I sent them to you. Did you show me any papers that prove that it wasn't warm back then? That spike of doom is real. Which papers prove that?
We're talking about the papers that you claim in your movie, that there are many of them.
Okay, so you don't believe it. You don't think it was warmer, even though it was warmer back then.
You're saying that it says something else. Okay. All right. Let me just stop sharing the screen. Okay, because I'm going to just go.
All right, we're halfway through, and we only have what? We're into topic number 1.
I know,
but yeah,
I know. Well, it'd be great if we could stay on track.
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. I mean, the title of this paper does not suggest it's got anything to do with climate optimum, but Northwest Atlantic sea surface temperatures. Let's have a look.
Yeah, it's got numbers that I have here in the post, that numbers like 4C, 9C, average of maybe 7 degrees C warmer. Okay. So the whole idea that we're freaking out over it warm since 1975 because it's a little warmer, it's crazy. And I think CO2 caused it.
Well, are you talking about the temperature of the Atlantic?
It says Northwest Atlantic Sea SSTs. Yeah.
So you're talking about the temperature of the Atlantic, right?
Okay. Yeah.
You're not. Okay. So hang on a second. So you're claiming the temperatures during the time of the rise of the great civilizations, I would call it 5,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago. You're saying that one of the papers that you used to show that it was globally warmer than today.
It's one of the papers. Yep. One of the papers. So let's talk about this, about how How do you know that the current warm period right now that we're in, that you're freaking out about, how do you know that that is global? I just sent you this thing about Antarctica has not warmed for decades. From 60 degrees south to 90, hasn't warmed for decades. So the current warm period is not even global. In the southeast U.S. and other places, it's not global even right now. So why don't you prove that the global average temperature right now is something to freak out about? Why hasn't our Antarctica warmed?
So getting back to your movie, which you were here to defend,
absolutely,
you don't actually have multiple papers showing. The one paper that you've given me says nothing at all.
No, I gave you tens of papers. You have to look at all of them. Sweden, Europe, China, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, but if the first one you give me doesn't say it, why should I trust all these other papers that you?
Well, I think you need to do your homework. You didn't do your homework. That's one reason why you believe in the climate scam is you have not done your homework. And we need to get into this because you believe all sorts of stuff about UHI and all sorts of other things because you have not done your homework. You've just believed, you believe the consensus and you get all smug about it because you have gotten very smug and very condescending because you think that the experts must be right. So you've skipped the part where you've actually looked at it. You haven't really looked at the UHI. There's many things that you have not taken a look at. And I have. I've interviewed hundreds of people who have very carefully looked at this stuff. I started out on your side. I believed in the climate scam. But when I looked into the data for myself and I wasn't lazy, then I found out that it's all BS, really.
Is it possible for me to have a word in here?
I think you've gotten more words than me so far. I think if we were to, I think you have.
That's because I'm talking about your movie and I'm talking about the problems in the movie and you were here to defend your movie. And then suddenly we get this.
It's all part of the movie, my friend. It is. It's all part of the movie. Is it too hot out? I'm defending the movie. It's all part of the movie.
I'll just come back to the point. I can't have to keep coming back to this again because we get lost in all these.
Okay, yeah. I'm worried about the filibuster thing because we got to get through our topics. We're only 45. We're halfway through already. So
what your movie said was, according to many studies, the time of the Great Civilizations about 5,000–6,000 years ago was considerably warmer than today.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, the only paper so far that you've cited doesn't say that.
No, I cited tens of them. You didn't do your homework. I showed you these ahead of time, and now you're going to claim, oh, we don't have time to go through them now. You should have done this beforehand because I sent these to you beforehand.
I'm sorry, but none of the papers you've sent me says that that was the case. And you didn't know what this paper that you've just cited said. And it clearly is talking about northwest Atlantic temperatures. So
okay, how about the Iberian Shelf and New Zealand and Northern California, Northern Pacific, Northern Sweden, Eastern Atlantic, Yukon, South China Sea, tropical Pacific, Alaska, tropical Africa. It goes on and on. That you're going to say, oh, you're just going to throw them out because they don't tell you what you want to hear? You got to look at them all. Yeah.
Tom, if you could just stop interrupting for a second.
Okay. Again, you're talking more than I am.
The point I'm trying to make is that the only paper you cited, and you said
no.
What's in it?
Not only paper. I've sent you 30 paper. Please stop saying only paper I cited. I sent you many, tens of them. There are 73 of them under the Marcotte thing. So it's not one. It's not one.
I'll tell you what we'll do then. Okay. When did you send these?
I don't know. You have to look.
You don't know. All right.
Oh, do you know? You should know.
No,
don't you read my emails?
I get a blizzard of emails from you, and to be honest with you, I've been very busy.
Okay.
I've seen your movie, which is what we're talking about, and I know the team that you're making, and I know that I asked you 3 times. And the only time when you actually sent me papers was when you gave this link to CO2 science. Yes. And all the papers refer to the medieval warm period.
Which is part of the Holocene. It's part of the Holocene. It was warm back then. It's very important. It's the reason why people on your side are trying to get rid of the medieval warm period. It's in the climate game emails. We got to get rid of it because it wrecks your story. It was warm back then.
When I asked you just now to name one, the only paper you gave me, the one at the top of your list, doesn't even mention that it was warmer, and we don't even need to look at it. If you're saying, well, this is only looking at Atlantic temperatures, we don't need to bother.
It doesn't mention that it was 7 degrees C warmer. I think you should have done your homework. I think you should have.
Why didn't your film cite these papers? Why didn't it say? Why say according to many studies?
Okay, it's an 80-minute movie. We can't cite everything. It's an 80-minute movie. There's no way that we can stop and cite everything. And I don't think you cite everything you said in your criticism of our movie. Like you said, that You said that you had this idea that CO2 Coalition funded the movie because I'm a director of the CO2 Coalition.
No, I never said that.
No, you suggested it, okay? You said I was a director, which I am not.
No, okay.
Yep.
I did not say that. If you're going to quote me correctly, do your homework, okay? I did not say that.
Okay, what did you say about it being pretty obvious what our motivations were? You used the phrase pretty obvious what our motivations were. So what did you mean by that? How did you figure that out? Did you use a peer-reviewed study to figure that out? How did you come to that conclusion? You're all about facts. You think you know about my motivations. What are they?
Have you finished? Have you finished now?
I want an answer. I want an answer.
Have you finished with your topic on the two graphs?
Absolutely. We're only in a topic one. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. All right. So and now it's time for my topic, which I let me just get the reference up here. Okay, it was on the ice ages. Now there was you had Tony Heller on it. Basically, the claim he made was that ice ages start when CO2 is at its maximum and ice ages end when CO2 is at its minimum. And he says that's the exact opposite of what you'd expect of carbon dioxide, was controlling the temperature. Okay, I'm going to share the temperature reconstruction over the Phanerozoic, which is the last 500 million years, if I can do that with my rather inadequate technical abilities. So we go to PowerPoint and slideshow, play, and then share screen. Okay, so that was the claim made in the movie. Here's the temperature reconstruction by Scotties over the last 500 million years. The ice ages, you can see at the bottom in blue, you've got the Ordovician, the Permo-Carboniferous, and right at the end on the right-hand side is the one that we're in at the moment, which is the Quaternary. Now, if we compare that with carbon dioxide levels, you can see during the Cambrian they were very high on the left-hand side there. And let's put the ice ages in. Two of them are very, very clear. You can see the one in the middle is the Carboniferous. So carbon dioxide levels drop way down to the Permo-Carboniferous, and that's when we had an ice age. And again, we've had a slow decline in carbon dioxide up to the present, which is when we had the ice age that we're still in. That started about 2.5 million years ago. The Ordovician is a little less clear, but there's been a lot of research into that, and there was a very dramatic drop in carbon dioxide levels around that time. And this is linked to what was called the Taconian orogenies. So as you probably know, when you have mountain building episodes, you get a lot of chemical weathering, and that takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. It ends up in limestone. So most of the limestone we see originally was carbon dioxide in the air. The reason for the drop in carbon dioxide in the Carboniferous was a huge amount of forest that took over a lot of the planet. It was very shallow seas and marshes and swamps and so on, which buried and sequestered those trees, which is why we get most of our coal from the Carboniferous. And in the right-hand side, there you can see the decline that we've had recently during the Eocene, which is the Himalayan alpine orogeny, the building up of the Alps and the Himalayas, which again weathered carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. It's pretty clear from this, and I mean, I can quote you a number of papers that have been done looking at this, which concludes that the ice ages were caused by the drop in CO2 concentration. So that was plainly wrong. It's just part of the evidence of the correlation. So why did you have that in the movie?
So you have the correlation backwards. You think that CO2 drives the temperature, but the temperature drives the CO2. That's why Tony Heller said that.
Well, he was
Oceans.
wrong. Hang on. I'll just quote you what Tony Heller said.
Yep.
Ice ages start when CO2 is at its maximum. Okay,
Yep.
clearly that is not the case. It was certainly at a minimum in the Carboniferous, and it was at a minimum for the ice age we're in. So that's incorrect. That's incorrect information. I'm sorry.
You're saying, let's see, what was the CO2 level during the Carboniferous in parts per million?
Because it was actually pretty similar to now, probably a little bit more.
So yeah, that's why Tony Heller said that. I heard him say that in a different debate that he had with you. You went back and forth on video. And near as I can tell, he said that because of the correlation between CO2 and temperature being backwards, that because as the oceans warm, they can hold less CO2 and thus atmospheric CO2 goes up. That's what he's talking about. And when CO2 hits its maximum, when it hit, then it turns back the other way and then you get the cooling.
Whatever he was talking about, he was wrong. When he says that ice ages happen when CO2 is at its maximum, as you can see from this reconstruction of CO2 and ice ages, that is completely wrong.
So what you are arguing is that CO2 is the climate control knob, right? That's the central part of this argument. You're not? No?
What I'm arguing is that Tony Heller was wrong to say that ice ages start when CO2 is at its maximum, as you can see in front of you in this reconstruction, which shows when ice ages happened and what the level of CO2 was. I'm just saying he's wrong.
You're saying he's wrong because CO2 is the climate control knob, or what does cause CO2?
He's wrong because, as you can see, and as geologists have concluded, CO2 was at a minimum when ice ages started. He's wrong.
When ice ages started at a minimum, okay. So, I don't know, but when did the cooling start? When did the cooling start for that particular cool period?
Well, cool. You can see here from the reconstruction.
Okay.
It started go in Carboniferous. And cooling started as we go into the Quaternary. And again, cooling started as we go into the Ordovician icehouse because of CO2 going down. So
because of CO2 going down, because you're saying that CO2 is the climate control knob. You said that because?
No, I didn't say that. Tony Heller is wrong.
Okay.
You need to get back to what Tony Heller said in your movie that you supposedly did your homework on. He made a statement that was incorrect. You can lead it in different directions and jangle keys at me and hope I'm going to divert from this. But sorry, but bringing this back to the statement he made in your movie, and he was wrong. Now, you can accept that and move on. We'll go on to something else. Or you can keep trying to argue that somehow black is white. But you can see from the reconstruction, that's wrong. And don't try to tell me the reconstruction is wrong because that's used by climate skeptics all the time.
Oh, okay. I'm saying, let's be done with that. But I am saying that CO2 is not the climate control knob. That's the most important part.
I'm finding fault with all the misinformation that was in your movie. There's a lot more of it. If we have time to talk about it.
Let's do it. Let's go beyond the 90 minutes. Let's talk about all of it. There's a related thing that you said that I want to bring up right here, right now, that you argued with Tony Heller as part of the same argument you had in the past. You said, you're arguing this is very important and I will be heard on this, okay? You said, we know that a similar positive feedback happened during the ice ages. Each cooling and warming phase is amplified so that a tiny bit of cooling ends up freezing half the planet, and a tiny bit of warming ends up thawing it out again. But each time something had to act as that initial trigger. So this is a central belief of yours that is absolutely wrong. It's a very important central belief. You've said this thing, not true. That just a tiny bit of warming or cooling because of positive feedback, a tiny bit of warming just causes more and more and more until maybe the oceans boil away or something, or a tiny bit of cooling the other way, the whole planet freezes. That's not how it works. Our planet is way more stable than that. So this whole positive feedback thing is a critical thing that you have tried to sell that is absolutely not true. I'm going to say that again. This positive feedback thing that you've tried to sell is not true, and it's incredibly important.
Thanks for sharing your opinion. I understand you're embarrassed about the fact I've just pointed out a big mistake in your movie. You want to talk about something else, that's fine. Thanks for sharing. Now, we've only got 10 minutes. We can move on to the next topic, or we can log out now and go for the last half hour. Because we might as well, if you like, I mean, if you're done with talking about the ice ages and CO2 levels.
Yeah, I'd like to go on to UHI or all sorts of other stuff.
We can move on to your next topic if you like. And what I'll do, log out, log back in again.
Okay.
And what's the next topic you want to discuss?
UHI, urban heat island.
UHI. Okay, UHI. Let's do it, baby. I will log out, stop sharing, stop recording.
Next topic is UHI. I think this is a very, very important topic. And I've heard a lot about it because I've had a lot of people who have looked at the stations very carefully and talked at length about it on my podcast. Yeah. So, yeah, it's critical. Anthony Watts has talked about it. Ray Sanders, Ross McKittrick, Willie Soon, the Connollys. A lot of people have talked about it. It's extremely important. And you said a lot of things in your critique of Climate, the movie, that are not correct. They're absolutely not correct about UHI. Okay. You said that that the UHI affects the temperature between urban and rural areas, but not the temperature trend. No, it affects the temperature trend. Then another thing you said is that things can change. Maybe an office block can be put up with large windows. But when this happens, when something changes around an existing thermometer, of course, researchers recalibrate their equipment to compensate for this. They don't. See, it's very important that there's all these different things that can affect the temperature readings. And people who have actually gone out there have gotten out of their armchairs and gone out and looked at these stations. It's appalling how much stuff is around some of these stations that is not being accounted for. That there was a famous case where there were jet planes landing at an airport in the UK, and there was a heat record that was set right there, right while these jets were landing. So that was a huge UHI right there, and it was used to sell a whole global warming story that was caused by jets. It was not caused by carbon dioxide at all. You also argued that in developed cities like Paris, there's not much UHI. It doesn't happen much anyway, because the weather stations are located in parks and urban green spaces. But I don't think that part of it is true. And then there is a whole UHI island in Paris that when the wind blows, it can blow hot air from all of Paris around. So that air moves around, and the UHI is a very important thing that is not being properly accounted for.
Okay. That's actually not what I said.
What did you say?
Go do your homework.
I have it right here. I have your script right here. Do you have it?
I've got it here too. I'll read it for you.
Okay.
Play you the clip.
Okay. Why don't you read what you said?
I was prepared for you misquoting me because what you said in your emails, I thought, nah, he hasn't got it right. Okay. This is what they, referring to researchers, discovered that in most developed countries, the heat. This is not developing countries, not about China and Indonesia or places. Most developed countries, most developed countries, the heat island effect certainly impacts the temperature difference between urban and rural areas, but not the temperature trend.
That is wrong. That is wrong. That is a very important thing you're saying. That is not true.
Can I finish?
Sure. Go for it.
And it's a trend that's being measured. That's why we call it global warming, not global warming. Now, what I said was, this is according to researchers. Now, if you're telling me they've got it wrong, I suggest you have a debate with them, tell them why they're wrong.
So when you say researchers, which ones? Okay. Is it all of them? Some of them? Two of them? How many?
The ones I cited in the video, and I'll show you if you'd like to have a look, I can show you.
Okay. When you're saying researchers, you're just talking about a person or two. Are you saying there's no other research that contradicts what they're saying? Because you said that also about the whole thing that CO2 is the climate control knob. And when I asked you about that, you said you backed away and said, oh, researchers say it. I'm not saying it. I'm just quoting researchers. Same deal here?
We're jumping around a bit. We're not.
Well, let's talk about UHI, because UHI is a big deal. I think maybe...
Come back to what the discussion is about.
UHI, rural temperatures are warming way less than urban temperatures. Way less. It's a pretty big deal. It's a very big deal.
Okay. We're talking about the urban heat island.
We are talking about it.
Now, let me show you the.
While you're looking at that, I'm going to talk about Ray Sanders just talked about going to a temperature station, and you could back up your car so your car exhaust is is feet away from the temperature sensor. And these modern sensors can, if there's a breath of hot air that goes past them, it can capture that. So there's a lot of extra warming that's shown on the thermometer that is not caused by CO2. Very important.
Okay. So the what I was referring to, and I cited the studies, was ones here that show that actually the temperature trend is pretty much the same in urban and rural. Now, there's no doubt there's the heat island effect, clearly. Cities are warmer than the countryside. They have ways of, it's a problem. Of course, it's a problem, but there are ways of calibrating the equipment. It's a bigger problem in countries that are fast developing, because in most of the cities where this urban temperature equipment is, it's in parks and urban areas where you don't get the development, but you do get problems where you cite them in China, for example. They often get relocated, but then when they get relocated, they have to adjust the temperatures there. This is Vienna. Now here, what they've done is they closed the gap between the urban and rural temperature difference to show that the trend is the same. But that's not what I had a problem with. I don't have a problem with that with your movie. The problem I had with your movie was this. You showed a graph of rural temperature, and you quite correctly said rural temperature is different to urban temperature. Don't have a problem with that. And you then showed how it compares in the 1940s to today. And your exact quote, I think, let me just get it. This is your quote from the movie. You said there was marked cooling until the 70s. After that, temperatures recover, but they are still today barely higher than they were in the 1940s. And this is the graph from the movie, the reconstruction. Now, you attributed that to soon 2021. I couldn't find it, so I asked you for it. And it was one of these rare occasions where you actually gave me the paper that you were citing in the movie. It was actually not soon 2021. It was soon 2020, but it's another minor slip. Don't worry about that. Okay, and so this is the link you gave me, and this is the article here. Okay, so I read this article. Oh, sorry, 2023, my mistake. See, we all make mistakes. This is his recreation of rural and urban in the thick, the solid red line, and rural only in the dashed blue line. Now, the first thing that I noted on this is that it completely contradicts what you said in the movie and what every scientist that studies this says.
Wait a minute. Every scientist?
Every scientist who studies
every
this.
Scientist who studies this. Everyone?
Every scientist who studies this says that urban temperatures are higher than rural. Are you questioning that? You said that in your movie, and now you're questioning it.
Okay, I was waiting for you to come up with some other totally preposterous thing, which you normally do about every scientist.
Hey,
sorry.
Here's an idea. Maybe let me finish a sentence before jumping in, okay? Your movie said that urban temperatures are always higher than rural. I can't think of any exceptions to that. There may be, but what struck me was that if you look in the period 1920 to 1955, according to Willie Soon, the rural temperatures were actually higher than the urban temperatures. Well, that makes no sense, but okay, it bumps up the 1940s temperatures a bit. And then on the right-hand side there, the dashed line goes a bit below the urban temperatures, as it should. So automatically that puts the 40s up a bit. But okay, it still shows a fair bit of warming, and it still shows that we're a lot warmer than the 1940s if you only look at the raw temperature data. So I was curious as to how you managed to extrapolate from that it was a lot cooler. So I'll show you your graph, and it's that. And if I put it up against the Soon graph, which you say is your source, and we've got the dates all lined up at the bottom, we've got the temperature anomaly lined up on the x-axis to make it fit. What is very obvious is they start up very nicely, but in the 1940s, your film shows these rural temperatures as being way higher than Willie Soon shows them to be. And at the end, if you look on the right-hand side to what you call now, your line of rural temperature data suddenly dips down, whereas his keeps going up. So, of course, the way that you've redrawn this, it looks as though the 1940s were only marginally cooler than now. why did you change Soon's graph? Why not just show the original?
Wait a minute. I think you're misrepresenting what we're actually looking at here. Isn't in the 1940s and what you're showing us here, there's a dip in that dotted line towards the end, the rural only. So 1940s and that dotted line are just a little warmer. I mean, what?
I'll show it to you again. You can tell me why they don't seem to match. This is the Willie Soon reconstruction from 2023.
Okay, stop. Okay, so we're looking at the dotted line, and there's a dotted line at the right side of there that's just a tad warmer than the 1940s. What's your problem with that?
Okay.
What's your problem?
A tad warmer. Well, okay,
it's a little bit. Look at that.
Okay, here's the problem. When you recreate this graph, you don't show it. What you do is you create your own, and you grossly inflate the warming of the 1940s, and you underestimate the warming right at the end there, the recent temperatures.
No, we don't. No. No. It's a little, what Martin showed in the movie is it's a little warmer, maybe, than the 1940s. I don't know if I even believe that. But I don't know what you're saying. The 1940s were warm. The 1940s were warm, and it's warm since 1970s. I don't see what your problem is.
Are you hearing what I'm saying? I think everybody can see this.
Okay, what are you saying? Say it very clearly.
Can you see the cursor? I've got the cursor running over.
Okay. Okay, so there, where the cursor is, it's kind of similar, isn't it? Willie Soon's 1940s are very close to the thing. It's similar.
It's kind of similar.
It's very similar, right? Willie Soon's is a little higher than the hand-drawn graph, right? Right where it says 1940s.
Yeah, a little higher.
Willie Soon's. Are you saying? Yeah. So what?
I'm looking at your line. I'm asking why you changed it. Why did you not just show his graph? Why did you make this graph?
Yeah, I didn't do this, but it's just a simplified graph that generally shows it warmed into the 1940s, it cooled to the 1970s, and it warmed after that. This is all correct. I don't see what your problem is. Yeah, I have no idea what your problem is.
Okay.
Okay. So what are you trying to? We're talking about UHI here. What is your point about UHI? What actually is it? You're saying it's not a big deal? You're saying jets landing right by a thermometer is not a big deal, or hot exhaust on there, not a big deal. Hot tarmac. We're talking about UHI. We're talking about UHI. It's very important. We have these class 5 stations that have all sorts of warming around them. We've got pictures of Weber grills right next to a thermometer. We have all these problems with UHI, and you're saying, oh, we have experts going out there that are correcting for that. There's no evidence of that. Anthony Watts has done this huge project where he's gone out and looked and found all of these problems. Nobody's correcting. I had Daryl Richardson talking about this in Fargo in great detail. He was just on my podcast. He saw a huge UHI problem in Fargo, North Dakota. Nobody corrected it. He sent emails, he called, nobody would correct this problem. So it's a huge problem, and you're thinking that experts are fixing it for us? They're not. I don't know why they're not, but this whole idea that, oh, don't worry your pretty little head about UHI, we need to worry about it because it's a big deal. If we're going to freak out about 1 degree, and we're going to let UHI be, in some places, be 2 or 5 degrees, then we have a huge problem. So UHI is a huge deal.
I can always tell when I cornered you on something because you start flying off into all kinds of different things.
We're talking about UHI. This is exactly our topic. This is right on the topic. Okay. I'm not flying off. I'm talking about UHI. I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm talking directly about problems with UHI, and they are huge. Okay. And it's
I'm going to take you back to what I criticized of your film, which was that you have represented that as being a recreation of the Willie Soon graph. I'm just going to show it to you again. And that's a drawing that someone in your graphics department made, and you don't seem to be aware of it. Fine. I'm sure you weren't implicated in doing this. You let them get on with it. But what they've done is that they've changed the graph.
So what? How would you like that graph to look? You just want to use the Willie Soon's graph. You don't want a simplified graph.
It doesn't matter to you then that they claim this is a graph by Willie Soon and then they just draw something.
It's a hand-drawn version of it, but what is the lie there? What's the difference? It's 1940s. It's showing generally what the graph shows. So I don't know what your problem is. And you're using this to try to argue that UHI isn't a big deal? That's your argument? We're talking about UHI, and you're just worried about, oh, this graph is simplified. And so then let's not worry about UHI? It's a huge deal.
So you're saying it's generally what he did, but it's not a reproduction of what
No, it's not a reproduction. It doesn't show every little fluctuation, But
As you-
no graph we have shows every little fluctuation. There's tons of graphs being used. XKCD,
see,
they don't show every fluctuation. No.
as you can see from the 1940s, it's showing temperature as being a lot higher than is represented in Willie Soon's graph.
No, it's not. It's not showing that. Look at the dotted line.
On the right-hand side, you'll see that the dashed line, which is raw temperatures, goes up. Yours goes down and then stays flat. So it's not a reproduction of what
Willie Soon's graph. That dotted line goes down at the end, right? So I don't know what you're seeing, but
I'm happy to let people who are watching see this.
Absolutely. But I don't want people to see this and go, okay, UHI is not a big deal, and we can let exhaust blow on the thermometers. Don't worry your pretty little head about it.
Well, I'm sure people can see the point. I won't explain it to you because I've explained it 3 times and you don't get it. Okay. Or you say you don't get it, but the fact that you try to move the conversation.
So do you get this idea that we shouldn't let the hot exhaust blow on the thermometers or hot tarmac?
There we go again.
Do you? This is UHI. No, this is UHI. It's an urban heat island.
Well,
this is my topic, and we're talking about urban heat island. What is your problem with this?
You want to defend your movie, and these are the criticisms I had in the movie. So I'll explain to the people watching this. This is not a reproduction. If you're going to reproduce a graph, you have to reproduce it accurately. You can't just generally reproduce it. Go, well, it goes almost like that, and that's about right. And then from the drawing that you've made, which has a grossly inflated 1940s temperatures and a deflated temperature.
No, it does not. It does not. It absolutely does not.
Very small.
Nope, it does not.
So that was the problem I had with that one.
Okay, so how about, are you defending your lies that you talked about? Oh, if there's a problem, researchers recalibrate their equipment. Are you saying that's what's actually happening? Because that's actually what's not happening, and it's very important. That is not happening. I have tons of examples of people talking on my podcast in great detail about these huge problems that are not being fixed. So you're saying they're being fixed. I'm saying they're not being fixed. And how about this issue of ghost stations? Ray Sanders talks about ghost stations, where stations are reporting data. Day after day, they're reporting data, but you go there and there's no station there. What is going on? Up to maybe 30% of these stations in the UK are ghost stations where they haven't had a temperature station there, but they're making up the data. Okay? They're just, okay, if there was a station there, this is what the data would have been. Are you defending that practice? Because that's an actual thing. It's just not in the UK. It's made up data. And I think that gives people way too much latitude to make up data that fits whatever they want it to say. That's a huge problem with the making up of data, and that's a problem with the hockey stick as well, that they carefully selected the proxies because they had an answer in mind, and then they made the data. They fudged the data until they got the answer they wanted. So that's a huge problem with the ghost stations. Are you defending ghost stations, and are you defending measuring temperatures right next to a jet plane exhaust? Yes.
No, what I'm doing is pointing out that your movie did not reproduce the graph in the way that it was originally.
All right. So you don't want to talk about UHI at all. That's what you're telling me.
As a result, well, you keep asking me what I'm saying, so I'm happy to tell you.
No, I'm talking about what you said. And you talked about this stuff about researchers compensating. That's what you said. Are you defending that? Yes or no? Sounds like you're not.
No, I'm saying
you're not defending it.
That you did not reproduce that graph accurately. You inflated the 1940s temperatures. You deflated the temperatures of the 20th century. Drew your conclusion from that. And
bullshit.
That was a keen paper. Anyway.
All right, bullshit.
That was another criticism I have of the movie. So there's two graphs and a statement that were wrong.
Actually, let's talk about extreme weather. I noticed that you didn't mention extreme weather at all. What do you think about that? Is the weather getting worse? So there's a whole idea that we have to do this because the weather is getting worse. Is it getting worse? We talk a lot about that in the movie, and you were strangely silent on that. Do you think hurricanes are getting worse? Does CO2 cause bad weather? Pretty important.
I think it's my turn for the last topic.
Okay, so you're not going to answer?
Well,
you don't want to talk about the...
Tom, you wanted to talk about your movie.
That's in the movie. Extreme weather is in the movie.
And all of a sudden, when I start actually delving into the details and showing you what you go...
Wait a minute, this is me.
Talk about the weather. Talk about the weather. No,
it's in the movie, my friend. It's a key part of the movie, and you're avoiding it because I think you know that CO2 doesn't cause bad weather. You're avoiding this topic. It's a major topic in the movie. You don't want to talk about it because it blows your whole case out of the water. The weather is not getting worse. CO2 can't be making it worse because it's not getting worse. But you don't talk about that. It blows your story right out of the water. Why do you not talk about it? We're talking about the movie. I'm defending it. And you're so silent on this one topic. Why? Why are you so silent?
Why don't you want me to go to my last topic?
Because I don't want you to avoid this important topic about my movie. And you're avoiding it because...
Your topic? Are we done with your topic?
No, I'm saying that catastrophic human cause global warming is the most massive scientific fraud in human history. And you're avoiding this very important extreme weather topic because it blows your case out of the water, which it does. The weather's not getting worse. You don't want to talk about it. Are droughts getting worse globally, floods, etc.? They're not. You don't want to talk about this topic because it's so strong on our side. It's so important that CO2 does not cause bad weather. Why don't you just say, if you believe it, why don't you just say CO2 causes bad weather? We can put a pin in that. Okay? Do you believe it? Okay, you're laughing.
You're talking about the weather. It's so British.
Talking about the weather. There's a $50 trillion scam based on the idea that CO2 causes bad weather. $50 trillion. They want to control every bit of our lives because CO2 makes the weather worse. And you don't believe it. You don't even want to talk about it. I think it's very important that you do not want to talk about it. This very important issue. You want to talk about, the 1940s, whatever. But the whole bad weather thing is so important. You don't get part of this $50 trillion. None of this money gets dispersed. None of this power and control happens if people figure out that this whole thing is a scam, which it is.
Carry on ranting for a bit while I come on to my topic. I'm just
okay. So CO2 is not the climate control knob. The weather is not getting worse, and the Earth is not too hot. The whole idea it's too hot right now, it may be 15 degrees centigrade. It's crazy because cold weather kills way more people than hot weather. And warm periods have always been known as climate optimums. Humans and life on Earth do better in warmth. When we retire here from Minnesota, we go someplace warm. When we vacation, we go someplace warm. We're a tropical species. We die outside at temperatures that are not that cold because we're a tropical species. Warmer is better. CO2 is better. CO2 is great for plants. The planet is greening because of CO2. In greenhouses, when you want the plants to grow very well, you add additional CO2 in there. The whole idea that CO2 is a pollutant and we should fight CO2, completely crazy. This is one of the most stupid scams in the history of mankind, and it's dying right now. It's absolutely imploding in front of our eyes right now. Banks are getting out of it. It's happening. It's dying, and I'm loving it.
They shouldn't have given you scope for ranting because obviously you can go on forever and ever.
Hey, you told me to do that. You said while you were trying to figure something out, I should do it. Thank you for giving me the chance. Because
no, that's all right.
No, this is very fun. I appreciate this.
Get on to my third topic.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure that we'd ever make it this far, to be honest.
Okay.
But this is a very quick one because you had Shaviv on. Talking about galactic rays.
Yep. Cosmic rays. He doesn't say galactic rays. I don't know where you're getting that. He says cosmic rays.
The galactic
rays.
He
says cosmic rays.
Yep. He
doesn't say galactic. I checked. I did my homework.
I think they are basically particles that come from when we pass through the spiral.
So in the interest of time, why don't I just tell you my side very quickly, because I'm not going to defend it as being the truth with a capital T. I think clouds are very important. Everyone on both sides agrees that we don't understand clouds. The cosmic ray theory is one possible explanation. Maybe it's right, maybe it's not. I think it sounds plausible, but I'm not staking anything on it. It may be or maybe not. We have to figure out clouds, and we have not figured. We haven't. We don't know exactly what causes some periods to be cloudy and some not. We can't model them. They're so hard to model. So it's one possible explanation. Is it the truth? I don't know. But we need to figure it out, because we don't understand natural variability. We absolutely don't. We don't know what's going to happen next because it's so complicated. But the whole idea that if we know the amount of CO2, then we know the temperature, we don't. It's all about complex natural variability, and the temperature fluctuates all over the place. The idea that we can control it by controlling CO2, that's not true. Absolutely not. But yeah, the whole cloud thing, it's a controversy.
And I'm referring to the paper he did. He talks about when the Earth goes through the spiral arm of the Milky Way galaxy, we do get bombarded with more cosmic rays. It's possible that these then create particles on which drops of water can coalesce and causing more clouds. Now, this is the theory behind it. The problem about the celestial arm of the galaxy thing is that even in his, I mean, this is what struck me about this. I thought, well, I don't get it. I mean, I'm not the brightest guy in the world, but it didn't make any sense to me. But when I read his paper, he actually said, and I'll quote from it, we emphasize that our conclusion about the dominance of the CRF over climate variability is valid only on multi-million year timescales. And the reason for that is because we only go through the spiral arm about once every 20 million years. So that can't be the cause of recent warming.
No. So there's all sorts of short-term implications to this too. There's changes there are changes on the sun that can affect it. Yeah.
If you let me speak, I'm just about to get onto that. There is the cosmic ray cycle, which takes place in concert with the sun's 11-year cycle. And what happens there is, as the sun gives out more particles, it blows away the cosmic rays. It basically acts either as a shield and so on. So you get this 11-year cycle with cosmic rays are more intense and less intense. And if that was the cause of warming, what I'm not quite clear about on this, and this has been the criticism of this theory, is that we ought to see an 11-year cycle in warming. We ought to see it get warmer and cooler and warmer and cooler, and we don't see that. What we're seeing is a gradual rise in temperatures over the last 50 years.
No,
even if clouds did warm the planet, and they seem to be feedback neutral, but if they did, that would seem to negate that idea.
Yeah, so you're looking for one control knob that if it's not CO2, then it has to be this 11-year cycle. That's not how it works at all. There's all these different cycles.
What I'm looking for, what I believe. Tom, don't tell me what I'm looking for. You got
well, you won't tell me. You won't tell me. Do you understand natural variability? Do you think you understand it? You don't. Do you think?
We're not off topic now. What am I talking about? The cosmic rays? Did you hear what I said?
I heard what you said, and what I am saying is that doesn't prove it. That you're saying, there's no 11-year cycle, therefore it's not cosmic rays. No, you've way oversimplified it. What are you saying? What are you saying? There's all sorts of stuff happening. There's all sorts of things happening. There's volcanoes. There is a cosmic rays. There's just tons of things happening. And just because you can't see this cycle, that means cosmic rays are not part of the picture. Maybe they are part of the solution, but there's so many things happening. Everything's moving around. I don't know what the solution is. I don't think 100 years from now, we're going to understand climate well enough to model it because it's so complex. We don't understand even the initial states of all the variables. We don't understand how they interact. So the whole climate puzzle is so complicated that I don't think we can rule hardly anything in or out, except we can rule out CO2 being the climate control knob. That much we know. We have all this data showing CO2 not being the climate control knob. But what actually causes the climate to change? Can we predict it? No, it is so complicated.
But your movie gave the impression that it could be cosmic rays, which is causing warming. And what I'm saying
that could be one factor. Yeah, we talked about clouds. Clouds are complex. That's a possible. We're not saying, we never said that this is the reason. No, we didn't, because I don't think it is. It could be a large factor or not, but we never said it's the reason. And you're not telling me what you think is the reason. You backed away when I asked you, is CO2 the climate control knob? You said, I haven't said that. I asked you, is the weather getting worse? You said, I haven't said that. I asked you, is the Earth too hot? You said, I never said that. I'm wondering why you're even on the side you're on if you're not willing to stand behind any of this stuff. There's all these core beliefs of people that believe in the climate scam, and I don't think you actually believe in them. I can't tell what's going on here. Do you believe in them?
You can't. You seem to be trying very hard to paint a picture of me. You've got no idea.
Well, I'm direct. I asked you these questions. I'm giving you the answers. So I have some idea. I have your answers to these questions.
Well,
I do.
To be honest with you, I'm not interested in answering questions about my personal beliefs in anything. You came to me, remember, you came to me, not the other way around, because you wanted a chance to answer the criticisms I made of your movie. And I've been trying really hard the last hour and a half to lay out my criticisms of your movie. I've been trying to pull you back from these wonderful little forays you go into.
What, into UHI? I'm talking about UHI, which is our topic. Yeah, sorry about talking about our topic.
Bring you back to the criticisms.
Okay, let's talk about this criticism you had, that you said we misrepresent science. We push a political message. It's fair to ask, I'm quoting you directly here, it's fair to ask what the motivation is. And when you follow the money, as Deep Throat used to say, it becomes pretty obvious. Okay. So what exactly did you mean there? You think you know our motivations? Are you a mind reader? Or you followed the money and became pretty obvious? You use the word obvious. So what is my motivation? And how is that obvious?
Okay. I'm going to end on this note because
okay, go ahead.
We agreed to do 90 minutes, so I'll just answer that very, very quickly.
Okay.
I don't know what the motivation was for faking or airbrushing out that warming at the end. I don't know what the motivation was for taking the Willie Soon graph and exaggerating the warming in the 40s. I don't know what the motivation was for misrepresenting the fact that we've had ice ages when CO2 levels were low and claiming that they were high, which even you have pretty much admitted was a mistake. So I don't know what the motivation is for all this misrepresentation of the science that was done in your movie. I can look at the facts, and the fact is that the CO2 Coalition, of which you are a member.
Not a director. Why did you say I was a director? Why did you say that?
No, interesting, because I made a mistake. No, you called it a lie. It's interesting that when Lundqvist, you put 2000 for date of his paper instead of 2010.
Yeah, that, oh, wow, that one digit thing, yeah.
Exactly, Tom. It's a minor mistake.
Minor mistake.
And I'll tell you something I do, which you never do. And I bet you're not going to do this now, even though you've seen a few things I've shown you that you got wrong. You're not going to correct any of that. I have a correction section in every video that I make. If people point out a mistake, as you did, calling you a director instead of a member of the CO2 Coalition, I correct it. That's what I do. I also cite sources, which you obviously do. And no, hang on, you asked me a question. So
I asked about the pretty obvious thing, and you're off on you're not doing fairy tales. You're not. Yeah. You're off on doing stuff. You don't answer the pretty obvious thing. I want you to answer the pretty obvious thing.
I was answering the question, and you suddenly picked me up on the fact that I called you a director.
Okay, all right.
I'm listening. Up on that, so I'm answering that. Now I'll get back to the issue.
All right.
I'm going with what you were going with, right?
Great, thank you.
So if we get back to the issue of what would motivate people to do this, the CO2 Coalition says in its mission statement, it's very clear. It was on the website. It's been altered now, but it said that its mission was to promote CO2 and fossil fuels. That's your mission.
Did it say that? To promote fossil fuel? Did it say that ever?
Yes,
it did. Promote fossil fuel. Okay.
Do you want me to show it to you?
No, I don't. I want you to say what this whole pretty obvious thing is. Okay.
I know, they took it off. They took it off.
I didn't know that. Didn't know that.
Discriminating.
Great.
Because the Potholer from which you came used to be funded by Exxon, and you've had funding from the Mercer family.
I've had funding?
I'm talking about the CO2 Coalition. You collectively.
Yeah, it's not me. I have not gotten 1 cent from anyone. Not 1 cent from anyone. Okay, that's very important. Have you gotten any money from anyone?
No.
Nobody?
Why would anybody pay me?
Oh, how about for writing for the
hang on, I'm sorry, I fell for that. You're changing the subject again.
Oh, okay, yeah, let's get back to the pretty obvious thing.
You're on the ropes, so you want to go off on a tangent.
I'm on the ropes about the pretty obvious thing. Go ahead, pretty obvious.
You asked me a question.
Yes, and it's been 5 minutes, you still haven't answered it. Pretty obvious, go ahead.
Because you keep tracking on to something else. Now listen, and I'm getting on to the point. What motivates the oil companies to fund a political organization or lobby group or think tank or whatever you want to call yourselves, whose mission is to promote fossil fuels and make a film that then alters graphs and does jiggery-pokery with the facts? That I don't know, and you don't know, because you can't look into the minds of those guys working for the oil industry. Now, we did 3 topics each. You added that one about motivation. I answered your question, and we only have a few minutes.
No, wait a minute. You said it's pretty obvious what my motivation is. You did not answer that. What was my motivation? You're saying it's pretty obvious.
Personally, I've no idea.
Okay, why did you say it was pretty obvious?
Because I'm not talking about you personally. I'm talking about the people that funded the movie, and I'm wondering why they funded a movie that misrepresented facts. As I said, and you didn't quote me, obviously, because you don't like to quote what I actually said.
I quoted you a lot on this very debate. I quoted you a ton. Don't lie about that. Yeah.
What I actually said was there wouldn't be a problem with an educational film that was entirely accurate. and that issued corrections and that cited its sources. The problem I have is with a movie that is distributed free of charge, so clearly you're not expecting to make money. You spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this movie. You had a film crew going out to Africa or wherever. I don't know what you spent. I don't know who funded it.
How come you gave a number then if you don't know? Kind of weird.
But
are you just guessing?
I've done filmmaking before.
Okay.
I know how much it costs to send a film crew out to Africa.
Okay.
And so you've got all this money spent. You're not recouping it from any distribution deal. So you're not selling it to the History Channel. It's free of charge on the internet. So there's got to be some motivation behind it for the people who are funding it, not you personally. Clearly, you are religiously fanatical.
No. That's bullshit. No, I'm not religiously fanatical. No, I am in this because I am here for the truth. I'm honestly fighting for the truth. The truth as I believe it. I've dug into this. I've spent so much time looking into this, and catastrophic AGW really is the most massive scientific fraud in human history, and I'm fighting that because it's the right thing to do. I'm not making any money off of this. I'm defending the truth.
I'm sure you're a fervently, very, whatever. I'm sure you believe in whatever you believe, but today we were talking about the science. We've got 2 minutes 50 left. So I think it's better to leave it here because we've covered all the topics that we both chose. And I tried as much as possible to keep it on focus with what was wrong with your movie and what I found wrong with your movie. And then people can make their own judgments based on that. Anyway, it's been fun talking to you, Tom.
Yeah, let's do it again. Okay.
Thank you for being a good sport. And I'll catch up with you if I ever do another criticism of you.
All right.
And if God help me,
let's do this again. Let's do this again. I would love to.
Hey, listen, and could you do me a favor? List those papers that you're talking about, because if I can't find them, I'm going to hound you for those bloody papers.
I already sent them to you. I sent them to you already.
We will find them, and I will tag that on to the video on the channel.
Perfect. All right. Talk to you later.
Mate.
Bye.
Catch up with you. Bye.